thousands are being killed. And
that's
so
the final
really
48
of these very strong,
for the month.
People. I mean, we know of the Gurkhas, we know of the
and
Sherpas,
we're going home now.
And these people who have a strong sense of pride and a sense of community that just have no idea how they're going to put their lives back together. And you're right, it's not romantic, there's no special effects. It is a story of survival, actually, because they find ways to survive. They find ways to find food. You know, I was going out to these remote communities and I was thinking, there's nothing left here. How are you finding food for your children? And they do. Humans have an extraordinary way of finding food for their children and surviving. And that's what I found most incredible about covering this story.
The BBC special is called Our World, Nepal Survivors' Stories. Yalda Hakim, reporter for the BBC. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Support for The Takeaway comes from TIAA Craft, a financial services company helping to create financial outcomes that matter. Learn more at TIAA.org and Lumosity.com, introducing a 10-minute fit test to challenge memory, attention, and problem solving, with brain games to calculate baseline scores and build a personalized brain training program. Performance can be compared to global averages. Learn more at Lumosity.com.
It's The Takeaway on WSHU Public Radio. Some stories we are watching this afternoon. Connecticut's House of Representatives has passed a $40 billion state budget after Democratic leaders worked through the night to secure enough votes. The bill, which needed 72 votes, was approved this morning 73-70. It now awaits action by the state Senate. A new Quinnipiac University poll of New York voters gives Governor Andrew Cuomo a 44% approval rating, an all-time low. As for corruption in Albany, most of the respondents think Cuomo is part of the problem and not the solution. In Connecticut, the police chief who led Newtown's response to the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School is retiring. Chief Michael Kehoe has led the department for 14 years. Newtown police got high marks for their handling of the 2012 shooting. Skies go from partly to mostly cloudy tonight, lows 45 to 50. Clouds and sun tomorrow, 65 to 70.
Here's another big story we've been following all this week, actually since last week. Wouldn't you love to know what Sepp Blatter's financial exit package might be over at FIFA right now?
The challenges that FIFA is facing have not come to an end.
That's the king of the World Cup, Sepp Blatter, speaking through an interpreter after 40 years with FIFA and 17 years as the head of the organization, a position he was just, in fact, re-elected to. FIFA president Sepp Blatter announced Tuesday that he was resigning. His announcement came mere hours before U.S. investigators declared their FIFA corruption probe had widened to include him. Joining me now is Matt Garahan, global media editor for the Financial Times. Matt, welcome.
Hi.
So what's the target now that Sepp Blatter is out of the way of this entire reform initiative and corruption probe of FIFA?
Well, the Department of Justice is exploring several lines of inquiry according to the indictments that they filed last week. We hear yesterday that the probe is widened to include Sepp Blatter himself. This is obviously enough to convince Blatter to resign only days after insisting that he had nothing to resign for, that he'd done nothing wrong. But the bigger issue here is reform of FIFA itself. I mean, he admitted yesterday that the organization needs profound reform, and it really does. I mean, this is an organization that's larger than the UN, has more members than the UN, and needs reform from top to bottom. It really is corrupt to the core. The Department of Justice called it I think a criminal enterprise in the indictments. And someone who's been looking at FIFA and writing about FIFA for many years, it's long overdue, and reform is very, very necessary.
So the shakeup has happened. The leadership is gone. It seems to me that almost is old news now. Really, the question of what's going to signal a change in FIFA is where the next World Cups are held.
Well, that's right. The Swiss, I think the Swiss prosecutors are looking into the votes that awarded the World Cups of 2018 and 2022 to Russia and Qatar. Both of those votes were shrouded in allegations of corruption, that money changed hands, that FIFA members were given bribes to influence their votes. But as I said before, the bigger issue here is the structure of FIFA itself. And reform isn't going to take place really until there's a new president in place, and that won't be for at least 6 months because Blatter isn't really going to leave. He said he'll leave once there's an extraordinary election to replace him. But it needs an outside candidate, someone with gravitas and credibility, and it needs to acknowledge that it needs to be shaken up from top to bottom. I mean, you have an organization here that, where a country the size of the Cayman Islands has one vote, the same number of votes as China has or Germany has, and it's ridiculous. And you end up with a system of patronage where the president can dole out favors in return for support, and it's completely unwieldy and open to corruption, open to criminal activity.
Well, let's predict the future here for a moment. It seems to me that Vladimir Putin has signaled that he'll invade Alaska before they change the World Cup in 2018 as to 2022 in Qatar. Are we going to be left with the largest indoor tennis court in the history of the world if that unbuilt facility is never used?
That possibly, and we're also going to have the deaths of hundreds and possibly thousands of migrant workers at FIFA's door. I mean, awarding the World Cup to Qatar, and they've gone ahead with horrendous working conditions. It's been well reported elsewhere that migrant workers have been exploited and abused in building these football stadiums. And really in a country that is completely unsuitable for hosting the World Cup, in a desert country with soaring summer temperatures, where a big football tournament it is really impractical and completely unnecessary.
And that could be the change. Matt Garahan, Global Media Editor for the Financial Times. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you very much.
In all this linguistic distortion of Freedom Acts and Patriot Acts and who can take data from whom is the fact that one federal agency has as its mission, in some sense, the domestic surveillance of U.S. citizens in the pursuit of traditional law enforcement, if not national security, the FBI. And one indication that the FBI takes its mission seriously is an AP report that says the FBI is using small aircraft to collect video footage and cell phone metadata in over 30 cities in the United States. The AP says low-flying Cessna planes are registered to subcontractors, which the AP traced back to the Justice Department. The AP says the information the planes are collecting and on whom is not publicly known, although FBI spokesperson Chris Allen said the Bureau's aviation program is not secret. Former FBI Special Agent Michael German joins us. He's a fellow at the Brennan Center for Justice. Michael, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
What's the FBI's mission authorization to do domestic surveillance, and then talk about these suspicious aircraft?
So the authorization is a little opaque. You might remember that during the investigation of the 9/11 attacks, there was a lot of talk about whether we should go away from the FBI doing counterterrorism and create a new domestic intelligence agency. And in the end, they decided that that wasn't a good idea, that the FBI knew the law, could do it as long as they improved their techniques. But instead, the FBI took it upon itself that, oh, no, we are going to turn ourselves into a domestic intelligence agency and actually create one out of the FBI. And I think that's where you see a lot of the expansions and reinterpretations of existing authorities into something that is far beyond reason. And certainly your earlier segment on the Patriot Act was an example.
I hope you've enjoyed riding in cars with that.
So is the FBI taking the Patriot Act as authorization to fly Cessnas over U.S. cities, or do they say, we have our own?
And we'll see you again on Facebook.
There have been surveillance aircraft.